So we can start with Q&A, or if you'd like us to give a brief introduction and overview of sourcing from India, we can start with that as well.
Okay, I'd like we want to start questions in the class. So questions, please. Who's with the first question? Yes, sir.
I do have a question. So what would you consider as the biggest challenge while sourcing in India?
So the biggest challenge sourcing from India, I think, is finding the right supplier, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, there isn't really a big resource, like Alibaba, where you can just go and type in a product and find a supplier. There are various websites, but each website has its pros and cons. Alibaba has an office in India, and they do have suppliers from India on their platform, but there are very few. There's Global Sources. They also have suppliers from India on their platform, but again, not too many of those. We have a platform called indiasourcing.net, and we are gradually adding suppliers over there as well. But India is huge, India is massive, and there is a big domestic market in India. And so can I please request people who are on the call in Zoom to mute themselves? I hear some sound, a sound in the background. There's some feedback as well.
Okay, if we now...
Some people are unmuted here, yeah.
Okay,
so India is huge. There's a very large number of companies that are actually focusing on the domestic market. And that can be a challenge because when you're importing products for, let's say, the US, Europe, there are certain standards that need to be met. And so companies that focus on the domestic market might not be aware of those standards, those requirements. So that's something very important to consider. When you are sourcing from India, you've got to find an export-focused manufacturer. Also, there are different production hubs in India, and each hub specializes in certain product categories. But at the same time, you'll also find suppliers of those products in different cities as well, but those cities might not be production centers. And so when that happens, if you source a product that is outside of the main production center, you might not get very good quality. You might not get good prices. Raw materials might not be available. So it's really important to source from the right production center. Then you also have to consider the size of the supplier, because there are small suppliers that are like 5 people in a workshop that are producing products, and then there are huge companies that have thousands of workers. So depending on the size of your business, you've got to make sure that you find the right supplier that matches the size of your business. So overall, I think the biggest challenge that people face is really finding the right supplier in various based on various criteria.
I've got interesting, Meghala, this just got me thinking, because the class, they've just been through a request for quotation with a China supplier. So I asked them to go to Alibaba and to source a tablet and get a request for quotation. Is that the same process if they want to source from India?
Yes, that would be the same process. So they could go to indiasourcing.net and search for a company that they want, and they can send an RFI or an inquiry form to any company. And they would include, their product requirements, their specifications, the packaging, quantity, all of those sorts of things. And then suppliers would get back to them with the details. So it's the same process. But what we find is, China is, I think a lot of the Chinese suppliers, they're very, very quick to respond. And so you'll find within a couple of hours of sending an inquiry, you'll start receiving emails from Chinese suppliers. But Indian suppliers tend to take longer to respond. And they're very cautious in who they respond to, and they want to make sure that the buyer is serious and that they're not just wasting time, when they are responding to inquiries. So we find that most Indian suppliers want to vet buyers as well, just as we are vetting suppliers.
Yeah. So
also trade shows. I think for India, trade shows are really important because a lot of these suppliers, they don't even have updated websites. Like, they're not very good at updating their websites with the latest products. Also, many of them are very protective of their design. So they don't want to put their designs on their website. And, that's one of the reasons if you go to a trade show, whether it's in India, there are a couple of trade shows that are held here, and Indian suppliers also exhibit at other trade shows in the US and Germany, etc. But they take their best products over there. They start preparing months in advance, for trade shows, and they'll develop new designs, and they'll do a lot of market research to see what kinds of products are popular. So that's another great way to find suppliers.
We've got another question at the back here, Megla. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to ask, like, compared to China, what's the biggest advantage for the India market?
Yeah.
Like sourcing from India,
Yeah, Mark can cover that because she's sourced from both countries, and so from her perspective.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of things. One is ease of conversation. I mean, India speaks English quite readily. So when you actually speak to somebody in the company, it's usually somebody fairly high up. It's usually the owner or the senior salesperson. And they're quite easy to understand. Whereas if you go to China, you usually end up speaking to someone who's probably just the sales girl at the front who doesn't really know very much about the whole process, who then goes back to her manager, her owner, and transcribes what you're wanting. So you can get a lot of lost in translation when you're dealing with China, because you're not actually speaking to the people who are making your product. So that's a big difference. And I think the other big difference is the lower MOQ. So sourcing from India, you can source, look, we don't advise that if you're wanting to sell on Amazon or something, but you can source as little as, 50, 100 pieces. Whereas in China, like I remember my first orders were all 1,000 pieces or 2,000 pieces. And then they wanted to make sure I had extra boxes. So you usually had to buy 2,000 boxes. And to this day, I think I've still got a pile of boxes somewhere in China, because when I was doing my orders, they'd all say, but you've got to have 2,000 boxes. So I found it very expensive to source in that respect, because I was having to buy larger MOQs. I couldn't just get something smaller and test the market. So I find that India, for most people, is really, a lot better in that respect as well.
Just a follow-up question, Margaret. Can you tell us more about the sourcing experience that you have had, the type of products and the challenges that you have had? Yeah.
Well, the type of products I actually I source it's galvanized iron products, so metal products. And I actually, what happened was I was sourcing from China, and I was doing silicon and all sort of very China-centric products. I mean, I was very new to it at the start. Didn't, sort of know as much as I know now. I wouldn't have done those products again today, but going back in time, I thought that was a good idea. And we were actually on our way to Canton Fair and stopped off in Hong Kong and went to this fair, and just walking through, there was an Indian supplier, and I just couldn't believe the difference in the products between all the China stalls and this there was only one or two Indian stores there, but the quality of the goods, and it's really hard to explain to people, but you've got to touch and feel Indian products to understand how much better quality and how much thicker the metal is, and how the quality and the attention to detail is. And because everything is handmade basically in India, the finishes are much better. We actually do a cheese knife set, and so it's got 4 blades or forks and blades on it. Now, every single piece of that blade, the stainless steel, is hand polished. So we've actually been to the factory and seen the poor, men standing around, and I order 1,000 of these, and they're standing there with their polishing cloth, polishing it and looking at it to make sure it's polished. Whereas if you go to China, all those things are mass produced, so you don't get the high quality and the nice, the really different finish is. The finish is much better. And I found, even walking around Canton, you had to be careful. If you were, say, looking at a cutlery set, you'd pick up one and it felt like a piece of tissue paper. So if you didn't actually go there and feel it, you didn't really know what you were getting. It looked okay, but until you touch it and feel it, you're not really getting, better quality. So I think sourcing from India, look, I've been to the fair, I've been to our factory, and it's amazing the difference in the actual quality of most of the products, because it's just, people pick up our products and say, oh, it's so heavy, and it's, and it is. And I've actually got some samples. I actually do a bar set as well, and my bar set is very solid. And somebody sent me a sample from China to say, look at this, and I can actually bend the implements in it into right angles, and it's so flimsy. So the difference is, in the quality is huge. So yeah, and I think, but it's very hard to explain that to people until you actually have one of each and touch and feel them.
It's interesting, Margaret, and India is a peninsula. So, as part in your experience, have you found that you're focused on a particular region of India that's close to a port that you're familiar with?
Well, it's more the production hubs of where the things are made. So I do mainly metal, and I've also got some wooden products, and they both come out of a city called Moradabad, which is like about 3 hours from Delhi, and then the port is like down. It's probably two days road transport away from there.
Wow.
So I don't necessarily source near the port. So that's a big difference with China. Like in China, wherever you source, there's a port very nearby to each province that does the different types of materials. Whereas in India, the main port is Nhava Sheva, which is at Mumbai. And if anyone knows the map of India, I mean, Mumbai's on sort of the coast, about halfway down. Delhi's right up at the top in the middle. So it is, sort of about halfway down the country that the goods have to go. But look, it works well. It all comes, most of the goods come out of that port, unless you're doing something from down the south or Chennai, they come from a different port. But look, I don't even think about that. Like before, I didn't really know. I just ordered things from China, and until I found out a little bit more about how China worked, I didn't notice the difference. The time frame, I think, in shipping, when you're shipping from India, we suggest that you go into the East Coast, so into New York. When you're doing your shipping plan, you don't go into California, because if you go into New York, it's about 21 days shipping time from Mumbai to New York, because the ship actually goes the opposite way up the Panama Canal, so under the bottom of Europe and across. So that way you're shipping in 21 days, and you're going into the East Coast, which doesn't have, I mean, some people from China do go that way, but not very many because of the distance to go into New York. So if you're sourcing from China and every, one is going into California, like you can have, like happened last sort of Christmas, where people just had stock sitting on boats for, 10 weeks, 12 weeks waiting to get into the port because of the big congestion with all of the shipments from China. Whereas, I mean, we had like about a week's delay at the very peak of the time last year, but that's the longest I've ever had. So, and I think, and it's much cheaper. Like when you're shipping into California, there's a lot of government taxes and like container charges and EPA charges and things, and they're a lot more expensive than when you're going into New York. So it's a much more economical port cost-wise as well as the time frame. And then I suppose once you're there, you use a 3PL or an Amazon warehouse on that side. So, you're not very seldom get sent to put all your goods then over into California. If you're shipping there, you'll end up in a warehouse somewhere around there. Yeah. And there's lots of them.
Yeah, very interesting, Margaret. And I've got a question at the back.
Yes. Hi, good evening, Margaret. So I was wondering, like, through international supply chain manager, I happen to recently know about he has a great wide experience in China and as well as in Vietnam. So what are the bigger scene of problems or issues you face in India in terms of transportation or maybe infrastructure and political issues? Where he mentioned that in Indonesia he happened to see a bit of a transportation issues. So what about in India? Like, why the growth? He seemed to tell us, according to his experience, that it's moving pretty slowly. So what's the issue over there?
Ingela, do you want to take that one?
So to clarify the question, are you talking about like the growth? Why is it growing slowly? Is that the question, or is there infrastructure issues?
Yes, it's true. Why the growth is moving pretty slowly compared to Vietnam recently took over after China, while India is a big country. The labor force is pretty big.
Yeah, I think India is growing, and the thing with Vietnam is that there's a lot of Chinese investment going into Vietnam. So a lot of Chinese factories are setting up their factories there, or Chinese companies, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why Vietnam is really growing fast. India is also growing, but India is a democracy. Things do move slowly here, because if the government wants to make certain changes in the policy, then the opposition will come up with some reason to stop it. So generally things move slowly in India, and in any democracy. I think it's different in a country like China, where the government says, okay, this is to be done, then it will be done no matter what. Nobody can oppose that, right? So that is definitely there. But otherwise, in the last few years, I've seen significant change in India in terms of manufacturing and exports. And like there's a lot of incentives that the government is giving to set up factories. There are a lot of tax benefits. Overall, the procedures have been more streamlined. There are fewer documents, and the bureaucracy or the red tape sort of is being loosened a little bit by the current government. So I do see progress being made overall, but India is still a developing country, and being a democracy, things do move slowly, but it is changing for sure. Like I can see it myself. I've been here for some time now. I moved from Singapore a couple of months ago, and it has like significantly changed from what was previously. We're also seeing more investment in automated production. So what Marg was talking about was, handmade products. That's a big category, like all of the home decor items. But now there's also a lot of, auto parts, for example. That's a huge industry as well. In fact, India is, I think, like one of the world's second or third largest automotive production hub. Like most of the cars and automobiles that are used in India are actually produced in India. So another thing to point out is that the majority of production and manufacturing that's happening is for the domestic market. So not a lot is exported. So that's why maybe from externally it seems like, oh, why aren't exports increasing that significantly? But that's because there is manufacturing and all of that is happening, but it's mostly for the domestic market.
Interesting, Meghla. I've just got an online question from Amir. Do you like to ask the question? You got your hand up.
Okay, thank you. So I was want to ask, is
And
India
by the way, Mia, where are you calling from? Just for Meghla's information.
calling from Shanghai, China?
Very good. Okay, great.
So I was asking, like, is India a high tariff country comparing with the other developing countries? So is that a big problem for us, like as a foreigners to sourcing in India? Yeah.
Is a high what country? Sorry.
High tariff.
High tariff. No, India is in fact not a high tariff country. In fact, tariffs are pretty low. So for most products, if you're importing into the US or Europe, major countries, import duties would be around 2 to 4%, maybe 8% or so. Until recently, India had a special arrangement with the US where there was no duties on quite a few products. But that has recently been repealed. But otherwise, India has free trade agreements with a lot of different countries recently. They announced one with Australia, where I think over 90% of products now being imported or being traded between the two countries are duty free. Then there's also another one with I think UAE. Another free trade agreement was signed with UAE. So I don't think it's a high tariff country overall.
That, Meghla, what you just said, that's great for Margaret's business because Margaret's importing into Australia, right?
No, into the US.
Into the US?
In the US,
Actually.
yeah.
Really?
Yes, I
Bigger
go
market
to the
over
US,
there.
yeah. Much bigger
Okay.
market, yeah. Australia's it's still going. It's slowly going on. But I just look at it this way, Neil. If there's a population of 330 million in the US. There's a population of 25 million in Australia. So if I sell one cheese knife set in Australia, I could sell 10 or 12 in the US. So I figure if I'm going to pay and shipping the stock is not much different. It's probably cheaper to ship it to the US than to Australia because you wouldn't bring as much stock to Australia.
And Margaret, you're selling everything on Amazon, is that right?
On Amazon, yeah. I'm just purely on Amazon, yeah.
That is so cool. We got a question in the class. Yes.
I got a question for Meghla. So in general, is it more cost effective to source from India? And does the advantageous level depends on the size of the firm? Let's say if I am a small player, will it be more beneficial for me to source for India as compared to maybe like Vietnam or China?
It is very relative and it depends on the product category. So I can't make a blanket statement that this country is cheaper than the other. you really have to look at each product individually and determine whether or not that product is feasible to source from a particular country. Some products are really competitive in India. For example, garments and textiles, specifically cotton garments and textiles. So if you're sourcing any type of, like home furnishing item or clothes or garments, apparel or knitted garments as well, you might find that India is more competitive in those types of products because it's a well-established industry. And in fact, India is the largest producer of cotton in the world. So all the raw material is sourced locally. And so that's why the prices are competitive. Also, it's a labor-intensive process, producing garments, etc. And so labor costs are lower in India than they are in China and even Vietnam. And so if the product is labor-intensive and the raw materials are available locally, you might find that it is more competitively priced in India than in China or Vietnam. Similarly, if you're doing, it also depends on the material. Like some materials are not available in India. For example, bamboo wood, China really specializes in engineered bamboo wood. That's their specialty. So you can source really cheap products, made out of that. But India does not have bamboo wood. They have mango wood or acacia wood. That's what they specialize in. So if you want to buy, let's say, a wooden tray, that's made out of bamboo wood, or if you source it from China, it can be done in bamboo wood for, $2. But if you source it in India, it'll be mango wood and that'll be $8. So I don't think it's an, apples to apples comparison. Each product has to be reviewed individually to see where, you can source it competitively.
Very good, Megha. And we got Syed, you have a question?
Yeah, hi. So you mentioned that like one of the biggest challenges in India is finding the right supplier. So I was wondering, like, when evaluating a supplier, like what are the main things that you look at and what makes one supplier better than another?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. And I can spend like 2 hours answering this question, but let me try to give a very concise answer. So the first thing is there is no good or bad supplier. You need to find the supplier that's right for your specific needs, your business size, your business requirements. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And what I usually tell people is to, make a list of things that you really want in your supplier or your specific requirements. For example, if you're sourcing for the US market, and if your product has certain certifications that are required. So you need a supplier that has those certifications. So that's an important criteria for you. Whereas if somebody's sourcing for Africa, maybe they don't meet those requirements, right? So that's very unique to each buyer. Secondly, company size is really important. If you're sourcing by the container, then you don't want to source from a small mid-sized company because they won't be able to scale. But if you're a small buyer, you're just starting out, you want 200 pieces, then don't go to a big factory because they will have high MOQs. That's the other thing to consider. Also, the location is really important, as I mentioned previously. You need to source the product from the production hub where it is competitively produced. Apart from that, you can also consider things like, the supplier's experience in that market. If you're sourcing, let's say for the US market, again, make sure that the supplier has exported to that country and they have experience, otherwise it might get difficult. Also, as I mentioned previously, make sure that they are export experienced. They have an export license, because in India, there are a couple of different things that need to be done in terms of government regulations in order to ship products outside of the country. They need to have an import-export code. They also need to have an AD code that is given by the bank that is connected to their import-export code. And then they also need to register at any one port in order to ship the products out. So all of these processes need to be done. So make sure that the supplier is export experienced. So yeah, I think those are a couple of things. And of course, quality is very subjective. And a lot of people say that, oh, I want a supplier that makes great quality products. But what is quality? What is the definition of quality? Quality in production is nothing but adherence to specifications. So if you, specify and tell your supplier, this is the specification that I want. If they don't meet that specification, then that's bad quality. There are sometimes, sloppy suppliers that might not have good internal processes. So that's something else that you can consider. Also, one last thing is the core capability of the supplier, like especially for, handmade products like metal, wood, etc. Sometimes suppliers specialize in one material and they outsource other products or, made in other materials. So you should try to understand what the core capability of the supplier is. What is their experience in? What material do they really specialize in? And if you go with a supplier that specializes in the material that you're looking for, you're going to have better success.
Meghla, I've got a question more about the trend of the last 2 years. That are you getting increasing inquiries from buyers, or may I say, let me say, seasoned buyers who want to diversify? They know how to source. They've sourced from China for many, many years, but now they want to switch to India, whether it's for a product or whether it's to diversify their own risk. What trends have you noticed in the last 2 years, particularly during this COVID period where everyone's just going online and buying like crazy,
Yeah, I'm seeing a very strong trend, and every other week we are contacted by, importers, not only e-commerce Amazon sellers, but importers that have been sourcing from China. There was this one importer who's been sourcing metal products from China for 30 years. And he's been traveling to China, even since like before China was what it is now, like a big manufacturing hub. And, he's really seen China develop, but now he wants to diversify and see what else is out there. So he's most likely coming to India in October for the trade fair, etc. And then we've got quite a few sellers who are doing, apparel and furnishings, and they want to diversify. So a couple of things. I think people want to diversify their risk, because they don't want to depend on any one country, just in case there's something that affects supply chains in any one country. So they want to diversify their risk. They want to also diversify their portfolio in terms of their product categories, so they don't want to depend on any one product. And also, I think people are a bit nervous about the geopolitical tensions in the area, especially between China and the US. I mean, that is a fact. And we do hear people say that, we are concerned about this and we want to be prepared just in case, the issues sort of.
We have an online question now, Meghla, from Sharifa. You had your hand up before. Would you like to?
Yep. So, is there any particular products or industries that sort of just started getting demand after the US-China trade war in India?
Yeah, there are a couple of industries. One is toys. We're seeing very strong growth in toys. Lots of big factories being set up. The government is pushing toy production. And there's also a toy fair that is going to be held later this month, actually here in Noida. And so that's one industry. And a lot of the toy production is for the domestic market, but also it's going to be exported. Also electronics, we're seeing a lot of growth there. So India does have a lot of, industrial electronics and electronic components, but now we're also seeing consumer electronics like mobile phones, for example. A lot of the top multinational companies are setting up factories here. And most of the consumer electronics like mobile phones, etc., power banks, they are for the domestic market. But as the industry grows, the supply chain will, improve. And then there'll be more factories that will set up and that they will export as well on, on an OEM basis. So as of now, most of the consumer electronics products that are being produced are mostly for the domestic market. But I think that's definitely going to change in the future.
We have another question over here. Please. Yes.
Yes, I actually got interested after you mentioned the cotton industry in India. As we are aware, the Xinjiang cotton issue, the cotton ban from China, how do you think it has affected India? Has India really taken advantage of that opportunity, or has the government done anything to attract big players in the textile industry to source from India?
So I think in general, people or buyers are trying to diversify. Not everybody is really affected by that issue, and I think suppliers in China have tried to address the issue as well. So I feel that I don't think the government has, like Indian government has proactively gone and said that, hey, there's this issue with China, come source from India. But I do see buyers do want to diversify, and they're kind of a little concerned about that issue. But no, I don't think the Indian government has sort of leveraged that issue to attract more importers here.
Next question. Yes.
Hi. Yeah, hi. So how to avoid the crisis of many scam outsourcing companies in India?
What do you mean scam outsourcing companies?
Like, right, like India, they have like scams over like mobile phones, like people sending in for quotations and stuff while
So
outsourcing. Mhm.
I don't think that's out by outsourcing, you mean like outsourcing services, right? You're not referring to sourcing as such. Is that correct? I think you're
Yep, yep.
referring to the call centers. Are you referring to call centers?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a big issue, I think, in India and other countries as well. And I feel that there are a lot of these call centers that make calls to people in the US or Australia, and they try to extract money. But I don't think that's related to sourcing as such. That's a separate issue altogether. I see that in the newspapers here every day that the police, clamp down on it, or they close down these call centers and they try to, catch these people. So, but yeah, it's an issue that I think needs to be addressed, but it does not relate to sourcing. As far as sourcing is concerned, you've got to, of course, make sure that you're dealing with a legitimate company. You've got to verify and vet them. If you're just dealing with somebody on the internet and by SMS or WhatsApp without even checking the factory, then that's a big mistake. So when you're sourcing, you have to vet the factory really, really well.
Okay. Hao-san online?
Yes,
And-
doctor.
And Hao-san, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Shijiazhuang from China,
Fantastic.
Hebei
Please go-
province. Yeah.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead with your question, Hao-san. Oh, it's frozen. Come back. Oh, while Hao-san's coming with us, Megla, we all have the Canton Fair, right? So you want to
Yes.
find out about China Canton Fair. Does India have an equivalent to a Canton Fair?
Yes, India does have, but of course it's much smaller than the Canton Fair. So the Canton Fair is huge. I don't know, like 20, 30,000 suppliers
Wow.
are there. But India, there's one fair that's called the Export Promotion Council's Delhi Fair. And they've got about 4,500 or so suppliers there. And that's the biggest export focused fair. There are other fairs that are held that have a mix of domestic manufacturers and exporters. So there's a textile fair with about 3,000-4,000 attendees, etc. So booths. But yeah, in terms of exports, this Delhi fair is the main exhibition, and that mostly features home products. It doesn't have a lot of apparel and textiles. There are furnishings, metal, wood, glass, all those types of home products.
It's interesting, home products are safer than consumer electronics. We've got a question from over here.
Hi, I'm Maria. Good evening. I want to ask question on ports. Okay, is the capacity or infrastructure of India ports efficient enough compared to China to handle become a export hubs per se?
So definitely China is way ahead than India in terms of the number of ports, the efficiency of the ports, the infrastructure, the capacity of the ports. In fact, in China, you'll see that there are ports, near every manufacturing hub, near every city. In fact, there are hubs, there are ports. India is different. Also, most of the production on manufacturing in China happens on the west coast, the east coast, along the like Shenzhen, Shanghai, Zhejiang, etc. So there are ports everywhere along the coastline. But India, a lot of the production happens inland as well. And so, and India does not have a very big coastline. So China has, a longer coastline as well. But in terms of ports, as Mark earlier said, Mumbai port, that's from where most of the shipments are done. And then there are some ports in the south as well. And then there's one in the west in Gujarat. So in terms of managing, shipments, I think as of now, I've not heard of overcapacity or any congestion issues at these ports. So I'm pretty sure there is, room, but of course, after a certain point, they do need to probably expand. But yeah, China definitely has more capacity, more ports than India does.
Yeah, I think on average, India, Vietnam, Malaysia each have about 10 million TEU capacity. and China's up around 170 million. So there's a long way to go. A question for Margaret, and thank you so much for joining us tonight, Margaret. And I think this is wonderful. Could you tell us a story about a challenge that you've had to work with a supplier that needed you to actually visit the supplier more than you were planning to, like something that just got out of control in some ways, or some story that you didn't expect that would happen? Yeah.
Well, look, I think with dealing with India, I found that I do most of my sort of communications over Zoom on calls with my supplier. I find that's the easiest way. So what I would tend to do if I wanted to develop a product and I'm not going to India at that particular time, I would, send them a proto photo or, something of what I want made, and actually show them and, talk and feel and point and all that, because you can do it live. So I find that doing that, you can iron out any issues. So I would say, like, can you make me a sample of that, please? And they'll come back to me with the sample, and we'll jump back online and I'll say, no, it's not right. Can you do this? Can you do that? And I find I couldn't do that in China. And I had one horrific experience in China where we actually had organised a gift box and a set of it was all silicon bakingware stuff in a box. And it was all colourful, really nicely done. So we spent a lot of money on this gift box. And when it was all, we actually had an American designer do the die lines for the box, so we knew it was right and everything fitted perfectly. And then what had happened was, when they manufactured the box, they couldn't read the die lines. They couldn't understand it. So they just made what they thought. So my goods got packed into this box, and the girl from the sort of Chinese company said to me, oh, you have a very big box. And I said, no, it fits perfectly. And she said, oh, big box, big box. So we just sent this shipment off. And all of a sudden, we realised that they didn't read the die lines. And instead of being about 1.5 inches high, our box was 4.5 inches high. Wow. So I was shipping air, and I paid an absolute fortune for the size of the product. It cost me so much money, but nobody could communicate to me that, oh, we can't understand, or even think, until she said to me, why have you had such a big box, And like, it was such a big box, I could have fitted what we would call a lady's boot box, where you'd put a pair of knee-high boots into this great big box, where it was supposed to be a very small, compact box. So I found that to be the biggest sort of issue in the communication, whereas if I could have got online and seen that and seen how deep the box was and things, I could do that, but we could never do that communication. So, and I think that's, you're sort of almost flying blind when I'm sourcing from China and not going to the factory, whereas I can source from India and not actually need to go to the factory. I mean, going to the factory is fantastic. It's the best experience to actually go and see your actual products in manufacture at all the stages, because in particular mine, that everything is virtually handmade, so I can actually go and watch them, maybe make a curved handle and the man sitting there, bending the metal and shaping it and things like that. And I find that is such a great experience to actually see that. I mean, and if I went to the factory in China, I couldn't do that, because it'd be just being pumped out on a big factory floor on machinery. So I think that's probably the big difference, and the ease is you can change things simpler. So if I want to tweak something, it's not that they have to completely redesign, because they're doing it by hand. If I say, can you bend that another inch the other way or something, they can very simply do that. It's not that it's all set up on a machine. But of course, the time factor is different. And I would say probably initially, if you've been sourcing from China for a long time and you're used to putting your order in and it's on a mass production, and they run your particular metal or whatever it is through, or your cheese boards through their system on the factory floor in China, that they pump them out on a daily basis, whereas in India they physically make each piece individually. So it might take you 60 days lead time is quite common on metal and wooden products. Initially, when you start, it might be 90, because you're developing all, the sort of style and the boxing and everything else. So I find that is a big, I suppose, learning curve for a lot of people. They freak when they think, I've got to wait 60 days or something for my product. But it's you being organised. So what I tend to do is I look when I do an order and it leaves the port, I go, how much stock have I got now left now? How long is that going to last me? Wow, in 3 weeks' time, I'm going to need to give them another order. So I do what you call rolling orders. So you constantly have orders on the go. So you don't, wait till you're down to your last, 200 pieces and go, bang, I'll order another one because I can get it quickly from China. So that's the big difference. It's not really a barrier. I think it's just a little bit of learning to order and do rolling orders, and once you get into the swing of it, I wouldn't change back. I mean, it doesn't worry me at all. I just know that that's how things work. But I mean, some things are 3 weeks. If you're doing, say, macrame or something like that, that's more quicker to do. Some of those products, you can still get them out in 3 or 4 weeks. It's usually the bigger metal and wood products that take 60 days or so production time because of the intensive labour. And what happens in India, they have such a great population. If you want to scale, they'll just bring more people into the factory. So if they've got an order of 1,000 pieces and they've got 6 people making them, well, if I want 2,000, they'll just bring in some more labour to do that product. So it's not going to take 3 times as long because I've ordered 3 times as much, if that makes sense. They
just
can
a question,
scale with people.
Margaret, just sorry to interrupt. Generally in China, we have this idea of 30, 30, 40 or 30, 70 in terms of a payment, staggered payment. Is that the same arrangement when you're sourcing from India?
Yeah, generally it's 30% deposit and 70 on the BOL when it's leaving the port. But look, I find India is much more flexible with your payments. I remember in China, we would pay and I would send my payment advice across, here's my money, it's gone into your bank. And then it would take me about a week and my goods would be sitting at the port. They're going, oh, we haven't cleared your money. And I'd say, but I've sent you the money, it's in your bank. Oh, the accountant's got to approve it. And it seemed to take me about a week to get all that approved. With my supplier now, I haven't paid a deposit for probably 3 years because I've got a relationship with them. I've been to their home. I know them like family and friends now. And so they never asked me to pay a deposit. And I have had shipments and I'll ring them up and say, where's my shipment? And he'll go, oh, it went last week. And I said, but I haven't paid you. It's okay, I'll do your invoice next week. So once you build up that trust and that relationship, they are very flexible. And I mean, that's not going to happen to you in the first couple of shipments. It's you've got to be doing a little bit of volume, and if you're just ordering 200 pieces each time, then it's probably not going to do that for you. But when you start scaling and you have a few products going, that's how I find it's a little bit more flexible. And that's the beauty, I think, of Indian suppliers. It's not so much a transaction, it's more of a family business most of the time, and they will get on the phone and they won't just go, what do you want to order? It's, hi, how have you been, and how's your mum, or how's whatever. And we do the same, oh, how was the family wedding? And you have a little bit more of, I suppose, a laid back sort of family sort of conversation and relationship once you get to know your Indian supplier compared to your Chinese. I mean, I found that a lot harder to break it into that barrier. They didn't want to do anything to communicate.
Amazing, Margaret. And we have Viola. Viola, you're online. And where are you calling from?
I'm calling from China, Jiangsu.
Jiangsu province. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So with India as a sourcing hotspot, and as we all know that India is a huge country with so many cultures. So I want to know that if there is any local agencies in India that could offer us help with screening local suppliers, because as we are all foreigners and new beginners in terms of this industry, and if there is, would you suggest that we cooperate with them?
Yes, definitely. There are sourcing agencies that you can contact, and these sourcing agencies would help you find suppliers, vet them. They'll also help with sampling, placing the order, negotiating, and quality control as well on an ongoing basis. So there are buying agencies that you can contact. There are a couple of things to keep in mind when looking for a buying agency. First of all, make sure that they have experience in your product category, or they specialize, or they have some teams that are specialized in the product that you're looking to source. because each product is different. And if they have not done that category previously, then they might not have good suppliers in their network. And they might not, be aware of what the quality issues could be for that product. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, in terms of, location, make sure that they are in or near the city where the product is going to be manufactured. So for example, if you're sourcing a wooden product, that is in the city of Moradabad. And, you want to have an inspection agency either in Delhi, which is like 3 hours or 2 hours from Moradabad by road, or they should have some, QC staff in and around the factory area so that they can visit the factory often. If you're sourcing something from South India, don't get a buying agency that's in North India, because then they're going to charge you to, travel and do QC, etc. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind. Usually these sourcing agents, they charge a percentage as their service fee, a percentage of the order value. So it ranges from 5 to 10%. And then, you can, of course, negotiate it as you scale your orders.
Can I just add to that? I mean,
Thanks.
people, I think that, it's going to be more expensive because I've got to pay 5% or 10%. But they do all your QC for you. They supervise the packaging. So I think, especially if you're new, it's quite good to use a sourcing agent and have those eyes and ears on the ground, that they actually go to the factory. So they're an extension of your team. It's like having a part-time employee on your payroll, who's going on your behalf and following the process. Whereas if you're dealing just with the factory and you're very new and you don't understand maybe what can be the fault with wood, like, are the joints done properly or something like that, having that sourcing agent go to the factory for you, because they know that, hey, that shouldn't just be glued. This is a bad joint and it needs, screwing or something like that. So I think sometimes especially when you're first starting out, a sourcing agent is worth a little bit of the money, because the peace of mind you get by having those eyes and ears on the ground are really worthwhile.
Margaret, we have a question from, who's got the microphone here?
Hi, yeah.
From the class. Thank you.
I'm more interested in terms of sustainable sourcing. So it's becoming more of a trend globally. So how much does sustainability, like the significance of it, how much significance does it have in terms of sourcing in India becoming an attractive feature?
It's huge. So, sustainable production and eco-friendly products in particular is a huge trend over here. In fact, even if you go to most of the shops, single-use plastic bags are banned now. They're not, they're not even like charging extra for it. It's like totally banned. You have to use cloth or paper bags. So overall, there is this trend of, let's go plastic free and use less plastic. But in terms of the materials that Indian suppliers use, I see a huge trend in terms of eco-friendly materials. So there's, a lot of jute and organic cotton, of course, and a lot of new materials are being experimented with. So for example, there's plant-based materials that are very popular nowadays with certain categories. Of course, these newer materials are not as, they're not mass market yet. The prices are still high, but I think increasingly they will become more popular, especially in, Western markets like US and Europe. But there are plant-based materials that are made out of cork, for example, that's very eco-friendly, or pineapple fibers, or cactus fibers as well. So that's something that's really coming up pretty fast. Also, a lot of factories we see are going plastic free in terms of packaging. So they'll use, let's say, maybe cardboard, or some type of paper, brown paper, or other types of packaging that is natural and plastic free. So that's a USP that a lot of factories tell to their buyers that, yeah, we don't have any plastic packaging. The other thing is that sustainable production is also a trend, although it's not, that widely being implemented by a lot of factories, but we do see factories that are, for example, running on solar panels. There's this one factory that makes organic cotton products. So not only are their products eco-friendly, but their entire factory runs on solar panels. So that's, very sustainable as well. We're seeing more factories, trying to do this, trying to be sustainable and managing their carbon footprint, and just be conscious about that. So I think if you are sourcing eco-friendly products, India is a great market to do that. Because not only do you have the products, but you also have the story of how it's manufactured.
It's a very good question, very good answer. Jing Chen, you're calling in
Yes,
from,
I'm calling from Shanghai, China.
thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi, madam. I have a question is, I was mentioned just now that the development of manufacturing in India almost for local consumption, like what you mentioned just now, the electronic product, mobile phone, maybe it's related to the India's strong Made in India policy. So, but compared to Vietnam's openings to internal and external policies is more attractive. Vietnam's products are exported to Europe and America with zero tariff. So which is a good advantage. So do you think is that a big challenge or problem for India to expanding the market shares? Thank you.
So I guess the question is on tariffs. Is that the question? Like, is the
Yes, like that. The India's product maybe it's most for local for India's, but compared to Vietnam's, maybe there is more attractive policies for Vietnam to export or import. So so do you think is any challenge or problem for India to expanding the market shares?
I think India will expand slowly, in terms of exports. And one of the biggest advantages that India has is the large working population. And so that is going to be a strength in coming years. I don't think there's any other country apart from China and India. Those are the two countries that have huge populations, and that's sort of our strength. That is what has really helped, China build their manufacturing industry, and that's definitely going to be into India's advantage as well. Vietnam, yes, a lot of investment from China is going into Vietnam, and that is what is really propelling and uplifting the industry over there. But then they have limited workforce, right? I mean, if you go to Vietnam today, their factories are at full capacity. They're, a lot of the electronics factories and even like plastic injection and apparel, they're running at full capacity. Do they have the space and the workforce to expand? And I think there'll be a limit as to, how much they can expand over there. Whereas China and India, I feel that given the big populations, bigger countries geographically, a lot of raw materials available in both countries. So I feel that, we're at an advantage compared to other countries.
Thank you, Megla. And we've got a question from over here.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Altri. I would like to ask a question related to my limited experience. So I was working with a procurement manager, and what problems he had faced is that he was getting very good quality products at lower prices from India while procuring. However, the problem was with delays in providing those supplies. So it would have taken a longer time for them to actually, sometimes the timing would actually pass out, and then only they would supply the products. So it would hamper the procurement process in a way. So in terms of that, when a supplier is very crucial, how is it that we handle their unreliability at some times?
What was the
That's a really
supplier
good
doing?
question. What product?
What was the supplier
in
doing?
the agricultural industry.
Right.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is a problem, and we've mostly seen this in the handicraft industry, where there are delays that happen, and some of them are maybe because the supplier is not organized properly, but some of them are also maybe supply chain issues that are not in the supplier's control. But I think there are a couple of things that you could do. First of all, have a strong contract in place. When you are placing the order, make sure that you've mentioned your specific deadlines, and also if you want to, have some penalties in the contract for delays or quality issues. That's something that you can do. In India, all your contracts can be in English. They don't have to be bilingual. In China, you have to have a bilingual contract for it to be enforceable in court. But in India, it's all in English. You can get a lawyer that can write up your contract and get it signed by the supplier. So that I think really helps. And big companies do that. You have to manage your supplier. So they often have very detailed contracts, and then they implement the penalties. And if you implement it once, then the supplier will be more cautious after that. So that's, I think, something that you can definitely consider to manage delays.
Very good, Megla. Just to follow up on that, you mentioned a contract. Is it the same situation? I mean, Mike was always talking about dealing with legal issues in China, and he was always successful. And the general information, or the general advice was, don't rely on going to the court unless you've got lots of resources and a multinational. Focus more on preventative issues right from the beginning. Is that the same with India? Is the court system, if something goes wrong, much more fluid and streamlined, that you can get a decision quickly for the SME or the solopreneur?
I think it really depends on how much is at stake. Like, what is the order volume? How much money is at stake when you have to, make that decision? If it's millions of dollars, then of course you go to court, and it may take long, but that's probably your best chance of getting something recovered. If it's a few $1,000, you can maybe let it go. But if it's significant enough, you can send a legal notice to the supplier. And that I found has worked for SMEs, because the supplier doesn't want to get into the court and all of those challenges. So they don't want you to file a court case against them, or they don't want you to take them to court. So if you just send a legal notice via a lawyer that's very strongly worded, and that's sort of threatening them to take them to court if they don't comply with whatever, if they don't settle on whatever you want them to do, that often helps in India. And we've got, it's not very expensive to do that. There are lots of lawyers in India. You can contact them. We've got a couple of lawyers in our network that we recommend. And in fact, one of our buyers had an issue with the supplier. There were some quality issues with one product that was done, and the supplier didn't want to give a refund to the buyer. And so they contacted a lawyer, sent the supplier a legal notice, and they were able to recover some of their funds. So I think that's something that really works well in India if there are issues.
Thank you, Megla. A few last questions. Yes.
Okay, I'm Joe. I believe one of my colleagues did ask regarding the port infrastructure in India, but I have another question regarding that in particular that might affect, in a sense, a supply chain end-to-end network. So let's say if you have ports, yes, but what happens when your ports don't function as they're supposed to, like the burst in Colombo some time back? My question is, how does the poor road infrastructure in India essentially affect the flow of goods from like source A to source B? Maybe like if you're delivering raw materials to secondary manufacturing, where they convert it into something that they can, in a sense, export or use for local consumption. How is the impact in terms of like the road infrastructure? What impact does it have on like India growing as a sourcing hub in the future?
Right. So in terms of road infrastructure, I mean, it's not bad in India. Of course, China is way ahead in terms of, the highways, and China has really good highways that they have developed. I lived in China for 10 years, so I know that the road infrastructure is, really good there, but it's not broken or it's not bad in India. I mean, that does not really hamper production or manufacturing or transportation of goods. I have not heard of that. The only time that it could hamper transportation is during the monsoon season. And during, June to September, that's the monsoon season. And in some cities, there might be flooding or, that there might be issues around that. But otherwise, I think the road infrastructure is pretty okay. It does not really affect transportation of goods.
The monsoon season's on now, Megla.
Yeah, it's almost going to finish now. It's sort of.
Okay. I think we've got one last question, and then we've got to go. So, yes.
Hi. So I just wanted to ask about the labor situation. So India is densely populated, and therefore there is a very largely available labor force, as we know. But does that make it a challenge to strike a balance between technological advancement in production and labor?
Yes, I think it does, because, from a factory's perspective, they might think that, hey, I've got this cheap labor. Why should I invest $10,000 in a machine when I can get, people to do that work. But I think increasingly the mindset is also changing, and there's more investment in automation in certain industries. It really depends on the industry. I mean, for example, apparel, there's a limit to how much automation you can do in apparel. Ultimately, you do need people to, hold the cloth and stitch it and use sewing machines. So I think where automation can be done, it is being done. For example, automotive production, automobile production is very automated in India. But then if you see apparel, that's not very automated, or home furnishings or glass, for example, that's more sort of automated in China, I would say. But yeah, I think there's sort of a balance. But then if the labor is available for, that sort of job, factories do tend to think that, hey, it's just cheaper to use labor instead of investing in automation.
Yeah. Megla, just one last question online, and from Hao Sun: does the Indian government treat domestic companies and Chinese invested companies equally in terms of trade policy? Will there be protection for domestic enterprises?
So I think Chinese companies, I mean, there's so many Chinese companies that are operating in India. There's Xiaomi that has set up factories here. There's, Foxconn that's got a factory here. So there are lots of Chinese companies that do have factories and they are operating here. One of my ex-colleagues from China is now living in Mumbai. He's working with a company there. So, I mean, there is, of course, some geopolitical tensions between the two countries. We know that. But overall, I think in terms of business, I do see business happening between the two countries. There's tons of products that are imported from China into India and vice versa. And there's lots of investment in companies also, being set up over here. Having said that, I think the Indian government also has this made in India kind of focus. So they want more production to happen in India rather than depend on any country. So, but yeah, I mean, overall, there's quite a lot of Chinese companies in India.
So Megla, we're at the top of the hour, and Megla and Margaret, thank you so much for your time that you've given us this evening. Where can students contact you if they want to know more, or if a group want to contact you and do a project on India sourcing?
Yeah. So they can contact us on indiasourcing.net. They can go there, or they can also reach out to us on Facebook. We also have a Facebook group called Sourcing from India. And so they can reach out to us over there as well.
Okay, that's great. Can you give a big hand to Margaret and Megla?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And best wishes for the sourcing, Margaret. So cool.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Dr. Neil, you're invited to India to join us for India sourcing trip in October, or any other time. If you can come visit India, we'll take you around. We'll show you some factories.
I want to visit. I want to visit the factories. Yes, and film with the video, Megla.
Yes, definitely.
Great, absolutely. And do that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Wonderful. Totally awesome. Okay, let's have a break for 8 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll get into tonight. Please. Oh, no problem. It's okay. Good. Thank you for your question.
Actually, I was looking more at the fact that, let's say, if a port breaks down, how do you divert it? Because, I do understand, in a sense, sourcing rely a lot on time and ensuring that delivery gets to your customer.
Yeah.
So that was more of my direction.
That's a good question. Cool. Let's if
Yeah, why? Yeah.
But you don't have where you just start hurting
This is the rough practice.
then it's
It's just a rough practice. Don't make fun of my hand. But this was right well too. No problem. Come on, we need to discuss now. Come on, don't make fun of my hand. This guy's bad. We go through your this guy's gone again. Come on, it's been a long time. Yeah, with like some nothing.
When you know what's going on. How do we?
Yeah, this guy is for you. How do we show the?
Yeah, no,
How
he said he's okay with that.
Let's do this. You have remember last week?
Yeah, share our Google Docs. We have like for the report.
Related to yeah. Not in the question.
You like tailor your yeah. So like to get this line in,
I just have it.
I saw yours from last year actually. You made one of the presentation looks really good. Like the line and everything. Do you get a tailor?
No, I got some of them. I have to get some of them.
So
Like usually it's the waist. Because
Yeah, put it in the exercise. And then
yeah, and then you gotta go to the tailor. You can the store won't do it for you. The store is like because the waist is very technical. Yeah. So once you do the waist ring, you have to adjust like this whole like it's a very complicated stitching and like so like all my formal pants I have to like get the waist tailored like if the waist is gonna be massive.
Yeah.
Then like
Because you take
yeah. So no, the length is fine.
But the fitting is
The fitting is fine.
okay. This is a regulation.
If I get
What is your waist?
If I get slim, I have to upsize for my legs to fit. Then
I get it.
let's do the.
For me, regular fit works, but my waist like is still like 27, 28, right? So the problem is like I can get a 30, it'll fit, but it won't fit like nice, right?
Yeah,
Like, there will be like a crease.
Just now,
with, like a belt or
might have
something.
like
Yeah. So it's gonna be like a crease here, a crease like on the other side, so it doesn't look nice. So I have to get it like tailored, and then like it has to taper out. He's having a meeting. He's on a Zoom meeting. I think Neil went outside and he told me. No choice. It doesn't patronize the shoes.
I haven't read much. They have.
Like the one where they do like the pressure points and everything. But that shit is painful.
When I feel like you got hit by a truck 2 days later, after that.
Dude, the day after you did that shit to me, I woke up, my traps were like, I felt like I had a trap phone.
But it loosens up a lot.
Yeah, after like a couple of days, to be honest, it was different, bro. Like,
USB. Yeah, and then plug it in here and then use it.
you get like a lot of like shoulder pain and like back like tightness from like rock climbing and shit. But you get more like issue, right? So like when you like grab the rock and just do them like over time, you do it very often, right?
They have a nutrition.
Yes,
Yeah.
I logged in it here. At the moment, I'm working through Zoom, so then it's working. I now got it back up and all good.
Just be careful, yeah. Oh, we need the. That's how it doesn't matter, right? Okay, don't show the sword. Just
Can you do, are you okay with KPIs?
Oh, it includes all.
Then
Okay, let's keep moving, guys and girls. One of the big things that you might notice with this class is that sometimes we're repeating ourselves. Is our online friends, are you with us? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. It seems like I repeat things, week after week, but it's because that most importantly, I want you to take away stuff. You need to go away from an evening with me, or go away each week, at least, I learned something this week, rather than, I just got smothered with more information. Okay, so for example, last week you learned about how to compare different RFQs. I gave you a spreadsheet, And you realize that, wow, information overload. All right. If you don't first set up what questions you're asking to begin with, it's very easy. You can actually get lost in all the information suppliers will give you. So you need to be very careful about knowing the product you have before you actually go talk to a supplier. Okay, knowing the specifications, and then making sure you get the quote that is apples to apples comparison. I think that's a big thing I wanted you to take away from last week. Of course, there's lots of details each week, but we don't have time to go too much detail. This week, okay, a bit on India. Yes, many of you know India and you've watched the video, but I still wanted you to meet Megla. Number one, you can email her and say, oh, I was in your class, you did a great presentation, bang, you got her attention. Then you can ask a question. Maybe you need to source from India one day. Now you have a connection. Now you have two connections. Margaret. Oh, Margaret, you came to our class, you gave us a good talk. You know, I'm on a procurement team now, we're looking for India, can you give us some contacts? Bang, see what I mean? You all know that business works with connections, all right? So even though, you know, there's lots of information about India and we can think about, oh, things are slower than in China, you know, in many ways, many products, things are faster. But in India, you've got the English versus the Chinese. And also it's more like you'll be able to meet the owner in India versus your initial contact in China is going to be administration staff. You know, and so the ports are different in India versus China because you've got so many ports in China. It's close to many factories, whereas in India, you need to be a bit more strategic about where the location of the factory is vis-a-vis the port. And, you know, and again, sometimes you might need more lead time. Margaret talked about the fact that often she built in 60 days of lead time, right? 60, wasn't it? That's a long time, especially when you're running an Amazon store on the other side of the planet and you know that the ship is still going to take 3 weeks, 4 weeks if we go through the Suez Canal, but maybe 8 weeks if you go across the Pacific. And you think 60 days on top of that, wow, suddenly that's 4 months away. So I better not run out of stock in the next 4 months. You hear what I'm saying here? So therefore, if we go back to global sourcing, once we start global sourcing, we need to plan ahead. We need to be very strategic about what do we need on the shelf in 6 months' time. We need to order today. We already knew that with China around the Christmas period. If you haven't ordered by now or by September, that's too late for the Christmas period in the US. We all know that around Chinese New Year, do not go and expect a factory to deliver your stuff around February and March in China because the whole nation takes 1 or 2 weeks off. All right. So, but now, you know, the last 2 years with the COVID, it's actually stretched supply chains even thinner because now you can't always get the container on the ship at your convenience. And then when you do, then you're paying, as Jacob told us from Vietnam, 3, 4, 5 times as much as you did paid 2 years ago. Welcome to global sourcing. Okay. So if you don't want a global source, then just stay domestic. Put your hand up if you want to be domestic. Anyone? You want to source domestic? Sorry, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They're even talking about that in the US, about reshoring, you know, coming home. Well, it's not going to happen for most products. All right. Maybe for PPE, you know, maybe for high-end consumer electronics. Maybe there's some of that going on, but it's not going to be mainstream. Global sourcing is still here to stay. And that's, you know, the reality of that. That's the transaction costs of global sourcing now. Today, it's the shipping, it's the lead time. All right. So big takeaways from India and what Megla was sharing with you, keep their names, find them on LinkedIn and thank them. Find them on Facebook and thank them. Okay? Because you're actually starting a relationship that you may need in the future. And these are all positive things that you can take away from this unit. It's not just what I can teach you, but it's what I can connect you with. Okay, so what we've got here on the PowerPoint, and our online friends, can you see my sharing? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Wait, Vin, thank you so much. Great. All right. So what you'll see is the second of the 3-circle control framework. And I want you, some of this sounds a bit academic or lawyerish because we're talking about contracts, but the big thing that you learned from Megla, also you learned from me and China, is that, yeah, contracts, you need to have a contract, but our online friends, are you ready? You need to have a contract, but
The contract will not save you.
Contract will not save.
Okay, let's try that again on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
But the contract will not save you.
Save you.
Exactly. You need to have a contract, but the contract will not save you. Okay? What do we mean by that? Any comment? It will not save you. The contract will not save you. Yes, sir.
Some places they value something more in contracts like relations.
True. Yes. Okay. And what make
Exit clauses in contracts. There's always ways you can end their contract. You are legally binded, but then there are ways to unbind yourself on contracts.
Well, that's a traditional Western view, but we're talking about when you're sourcing from suppliers in developing countries and developing economies, right? You should have a contract because you want to set out the expectations, but it won't save you. Megla gave you a hint in her talk. What did Megla say? Yes, sir?
Is it the bond and relation?
Pardon?
Is the bond and the relation between them?
Yeah, we understand relationship, but it all gets back to the transaction costs. How big is your transaction? Okay. Yes, you can go to court, but that may take 6 months, 12 months. Will you get your money back? Maybe. All right. Remember, the contract probably save you in the US, but it won't save you in an emerging economy. Why do I say that? And a bit cryptic here, by starting my next talk for 20 minutes, the contract will not save you if you know that beforehand. But at the same time saying, but you need to have a contract. Okay, let's do a contract, make sure. But we're doing a contract for other reasons. And that reason is just to help the communication of your expectations, to detail the expectation, to detail the agreement. In some ways, you're trying to detail, formalize the relationship. And of course, the relationship needs an informal element too. But it won't save you if something goes wrong. If you know that, then it's more likely you'll spend a little bit more time at the front end to make sure what? If you know the contract won't save you, especially as an SME, especially as a solopreneur, we're not talking about Apple and HP and the big companies, because they can just throw lawyers and get remedies for whatever they want if something goes wrong, all right? And they have the power to say, well, Mr. Supplier, you did wrong by us, so we're not going to buy from you again. And because they're buying so big, it's a big loss to the supplier, so the supplier won't do them wrong, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about SME, we're talking about solopreneur, all right? All right, SME, solopreneur, they do not have the deep pockets to get involved in contractual remedies. Okay, So if you know that at the beginning, then you got to go to the start and think about, okay, what do I need to do first, second, third, fourth, and fifth to make sure that that ending doesn't happen. You with me? And so that's what I'm just going to talk about. All right. So therefore, you need to think about your purchase order. You need to think about audit of the factory. You need to think about intellectual property or warranties or ADR clauses. You need to think about all of these things. Many of you, some of you have had a chance to watch the video of my associate, Mike Bellamy. Remember the guy, bald head guy talking in front of the fish? You know the fish? How are you? Huh? What color was the fish? Bayu, right? Da Bayu, is that right? Yeah, okay, big fish at the back, right? So you all know what I'm talking about, right? So he's very, very smart. Why? Because Mike, he runs a company in China and buyers will go to him and he has a black box. That black box enables him to secretly assemble products that suppliers cannot see and then ship them to markets so suppliers cannot copy and then they cannot compete. And he made that into a multi-million-dollar business just on that alone. But he was telling me that he has actually gone to court 7 or 8 times in China and won on every occasion. Why? Because he got the contract set in place at the beginning. So I asked Mike, I know you win, but do you really win? He said, not really. You spend too much time and the remedy is not good. The supplier may not pay you back at the end. You know, they're just asked to close down and not be seen again. You with me here? All right. All right. So yes, you can win in the court in India, in China. When I say the contract can't save you, I don't mean it's not going to save, it's not going to bring you back to the beginning point like it might be able to do in the US or Europe, where you get damages and you get remedies and you know, the whole idea of damages to bring you back to where things should have been before things went wrong, before someone did you bad, right? So you can't expect that in a developing economy that you're sourcing from. All right, so what do you do? What do you do? First of all, intellectual property. First of all, FTM to FTR. Interesting. This is about first to market versus first to register. How many of you have heard of that? So we're talking about trademarks, we're talking about patents, right? Okay. So here's the question for all of you, because simple question, it's either an A or B. All right. So in the USA, if you want to register a trademark or patent, is the law in the USA protects you when you're first to market or first to register? A, first to market, B, first to register. Put your hand up for A, hands up for B, first to register. Okay. And what about China? Because in the US, huh?
The opposite.
It's the opposite. But but it's the other way around. In the USA, in China, it's actually the first to market. So other way around. Okay. Let me think. First to market, first to market. So which way? Oh, I'm just confused for a moment. Confuse me. In China, it's the first to. I'll check that. I'll get back to you on that one. But it's the opposite to the USA. And so some buyers, they'll come into China and they'll think, oh, I've registered, so I've got protection. But if someone's been in the market beforehand, then they have. So in China, it is the first to register. In the USA, it's the first to market. So the only exclusion for that. Yes, sir?
Sorry, I think you meant it the other way around.
Yeah. All right. The only exclusion is if you're Louis Vuitton or if you're a global brand, then you can get away with both. It really doesn't matter. All right. So no one can counterfeit Louis Vuitton in China, even if they've registered or they haven't registered, because it's a global brand. Okay. I'm a bit confused for a moment. All right. Ports, suppliers too. All right. Limited exposure. This is what Mike Bellamy does Mike Bellamy does this with the black box. And that is, how do you limit exposure to the supplier? In the pre-production phase, you might be designing something, and that might be a pen. If we get a pen, where's our pen? How come I haven't got a pen? Here we are. All right, so we've got a pen here, and what Mike's company does as a black box is, I don't want the supplier to see this new design. Maybe it's a pen with a microphone on top. Maybe it has a hidden camera. So I don't want a supplier to actually see the full product when I'm designing this. So what Mike's company does is get one supplier to supply one part of the product to his factory, and he gets another supplier to supply the other product. And what Mike does is actually put them together. And each supplier does not know the final product. And then he will secretly ship that to the market that the buyer wants, whether it's the US, Europe, Australia, and the suppliers don't know. Because the last thing you want to do is have suppliers know your new design that you're playing with, because part of the new design may require tooling. And that's another thing about the tooling. All right. Suppliers will say to you, oh, the tooling, oh, don't worry about that. We will look after the tooling for you. We will look after it. Oh, thank you. The supplier's so nice. So nice. And you're thinking, oh, I've got a good deal with this supplier. But the supplier, what will do, the tooling may range from 50,000 to 100,000 yuan, which is very, up to 10,000 US dollars or more. The tooling, that is like a big piece of metal with a cavity in the middle where you squirt injection molten steel, metal, aluminium, or plastic, depending on what the injection molding machine is. And then it opens up and out comes your, ta-da! We've got our new phone, right? New phone outside, right? And if the supplier can do this for you, that means they could make the same for someone else without telling you. You with me? So the other big thing you need to do is own the tooling. You should own the tooling. Here's another thing. How many of you all did a request for quotation, am I right? All right. How many of you met the supplier and the supplier said to you, oh, don't worry. We've got an offer where we can look after the shipping for you. Where are you shipping? Oh, Malaysia. Don't worry. Here's the quote. We'll organise it for you. Put your hand up if you had a supplier do that for you. Put your hand up if you were happy when the supplier gave you that service.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Exciting, right? But now the supplier knows your market. So what's to stop the supplier put double your product in another container or another package and ship it to the same market and compete with you? The supplier made it for you. Why can't they make it for themselves? So what you thought you had a good deal because O'Connor required you to do a fourth page, which has a what was that? What was that fourth page? Freight forwarder quotation, right? And you kept on bugging me, didn't you? Am I right? You kept on saying, oh, the supplier's already offered me. Why do I have to get a separate one? I didn't tell you. All right. So maybe there's a good reason to get a separate one. Maybe there's a good reason that you don't want to tell the supplier where your market is. Okay. But, maybe for tablets, it's not that bad. But what if it's a simple, very low margin item like a marker pen or something? Maybe it's a new design that you have. Okay? It's so easy for a supplier to make double without telling you. Then throw it into an airplane or a ship. Could be in the same plane that's bringing your product to your market. Okay? I'm so glad you got that offer from your supplier. Right? Be aware, be careful. All right. So it's interesting. In the industry, they talk about compartmentalize. That is separating different parts, that the supplier doesn't do everything, but does different parts. Each of the parts come to a central secret location, and then it is assembled, then shipped secretly from the supplier. It's interesting that I visited Mike Bellamy in China many times. I've got video I'll show you another time. Long story short, that day there was a box, there was a parcel, a truck pulled up and they delivered these boxes. And I said, Mike, what are you doing with these boxes? They look like they're already packed and ready to ship. He said, Neil, you're not paying attention. Have a close look at these boxes. There's no information on the boxes. My contract with this buyer is just to put on the shipping information so the supplier doesn't know where they're going. That's all. So the truck, they took the boxes off, truck ran away, and then Mike organised another. Then they just printed out the labels, put on the boxes, and then shipped to where they're going to ship. Little things like that. Just so the buyer doesn't want the supplier knowing where the market is. All right, so you talk about, remember tonight, this 20 minutes was, okay, have a contract, but it won't save you. So you got to do these other things, all right? If you know the contract won't save you, this is what you have to do, right? Because if you're in the US and you have a contract in the US, you can actually send someone to court for doing something wrong by you. And you have evidence, you've got the market, and then you can, that's the end of their business. Very easy to do. But how are you going to do that against a supplier halfway around the world when the product is on Amazon next to yours for 1/3 the price because you are happy to tell the supplier where your market is? Okay. You are happy to allow the supplier to own the tooling. You are happy to allow the supplier to physically keep the tooling in the factory instead of having a tool and die steward come and bring the tooling to the factory on the day of production. Then at the end of that day, pick up the tooling and take it back to Mike's warehouse. Like little things like that, you think, why would people go to that extreme to protect their product? Like, because once a container load of your product, counterfeit, goes on Amazon next to yours and it's identical because it's the same tooling, then your business is over. Of course, Amazon will close them down, but once people see something that's 1/3 the price, they're not going to touch your product. Amazon will close them down. What will happen? All that inventory will go into a $10 shop around the US. So why would I go on Amazon, pay 4 times as much, or I go down to the $10 shop and get the same thing? All right. All right. So what I'm telling you is horror stories, right? And so when you understand from that point of view, then you're happy to spend more money to keep in mind these things. Okay. Real. Okay. Because you know when I hold up this, what do you say? Sand. You know that, all right? All right. It's real stuff, real good. All right. So what about different excuses? Our power was out, tooling malfunction, sub-supplier is a problem. You've got all of these problems that can go wrong. The scam, payment, quality, delivery, intellectual property, import of record, wrong jurisdiction, no ADR clause. All right, these are all different problems that can go wrong. And so you write the contract with this in mind. But remember, you've got to have a contract, write the contract that in mind, but the contract won't save you. All right. All right. It won't save you. All right. And I'm not going to go through every line of this, but you can go back, listen to Mike's talk, and he does cover all of those issues in putting that contract together. Tonight is not a legal discussion of how to put down the perfect contract, but I really want to talk about the physical things you need to do, like having that black box, separating separating the supplier's finishing of your goods and who puts the label on the packing, because the label says where it's being shipped to. Okay, separating the forwarding agent from the supplier. All right. Don't worry, I'm not going to mark you down if you just had the forwarding market agent quote from the supplier, but I did encourage you, please get a separate forwarding agent quotation. Okay. All right. So good. I think lots of good learning and going through that request for quotation. One more thing is, yes, Megla is right in talking about India. You know, you do have a letter of demand and that can pay off. But that's basically the old style of working through a disagreement. Am I right? Right? You know, you just, hey, you did wrong by me. You know, let's have a fight. You know, so that's the relationship way of trying to handle a dispute, right? A letter of demand. Or you can go to mediation. And these options are available in China and India, right? Or ultimately, you go to arbitration and litigation. But once you go down to the bottom, that's where the relationship stops. It's possible you can go to mediation and try preserve the relationship, but if you go even further, then it's over. And you better have the resources, you better have the money, you better have the time. And it's only the multinationals that really have that. Like, that's a general statement, but that's not for an SME, for a solopreneur to try. That's not a road that they should go down. All right, so very exciting stuff to know that, yeah, we've got to have a contract, but it won't save you. All right, so very good. That's the big thing I want to show you from Mike's. So go back, if you haven't done so, go back and listen to Mike's talk. I think it goes for 30 minutes and very rich experience in what he has to say. And I just want to share with you, and you're probably thinking, oh, Neil, I think, you know, this is not that real, that, you know, it may be 1 in 1,000 buyers get duped by a supplier. This is not regular. Okay, so my friend Mike, and you can look this up. Actually, all of you, this could be a project. Remember, every week I'm giving you hints. You can do a project, right? You do a project in India. Contact Megla, work with her and do a project in India if you want to. It doesn't matter. I don't really care. But please be open-minded about what your project can be on, something that you're interested in. All right. But what I'm about to share with you are things that are real when it comes to scams and financial fraud. Because my friend Mike, he saw a lot of it over he's been in China for 20, 25 years. He set up this website called, you can find it now, blacklist.com. Okay. So let me ask you a question, and your answer has to be a number. It could be any number, so don't worry. All right. So how many, this has been open for about 5 years, 6, 7, I think 2014, 7, 8 years now. All right. How many complaints are on that, do you think? Okay, more than 100, hands up. Of course, more than 100. Yeah. All right. More than 500. Yeah. More than 1,000. 2,000. 3,000. Yeah, it's over 3,000. All right, 3,000. So Mike was very nice to me. He said, Neil, maybe you can do some research on this. And I said, oh yeah, I'd love to do research on that. Can I get the data? He said, sure. You know, so he gave me access to all the data. So what I'm about to share with you now is actually what the data says about all of the problems of those 3,000 complaints. I think we're documenting less than 3,000, but I just want to show you that we can talk to Charles another day, but that's an example of him talking about the sand in the battery. So you can follow up on that. But here's an example of a scam. This is an actual website that was set up, and this buyer or factory wants you to buy a three-wheel motorcycle. How much? $200 US. $200 US. Yes, it's good. Or if you don't like that, we've got motorcycles, we've got ATVs, we've got Segways, everything. We've got anything you like. So that's what a scammy website looks like. All right. And oh, by the way, if you don't like that, oh, we've got mobile phones, tablets. Oh, tablet. You had to get an RFQ on a tablet. Be careful if you went to this site. All right. But this is real. Okay. It's real. It's real. iPhone 4, right? iPhone 4, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
God.
iPhone 4. Remember the iPhone 4?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, iPhone 4. Rubbish. That's not an iPhone 4. That's a copy. Copy. Look at it. All right. It's got dual SIM inside. It's even got an antenna on it. Like, they do lots of things to make, it's called innovation. All right. All right. This is real. All right. There are suppliers out there, factories, that are very ingenious. They can make anything to sell, pass it around. All right. It's real stuff. Real stuff. I didn't hurt you, right? You're okay? Good. All right. And yeah, be careful because the battery in it's starting to explode.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that. It's getting fat. All right. Always be careful where you buy the battery from. It's very dangerous. Okay. All right. So it's very easy to make up products. It's very easy. All right. All right. So, and if you go to the website, remember, you all had to go to the website to see if the supplier was real. Well, I hope that your RFQ wasn't from a supplier that said, oh, don't worry, we have more than 80 R&D staff.
Oh,
but our total staff is only 200. Like 80 R&D out of 200? You've got to be kidding me. All right. And little things like, oh, we have all the ISO, a factory location, all right, is in this district. It's on floor 4, but it's 5,000 square meters. You've got to be kidding me. All right. So there's things that you can see for your very own eyes that this does not make sense. Okay. And this is payment. Oh, by the way, don't worry, you know, payment is easy. Western Union, perfect. Perfect. Western Union. Why? Because that's one of the gateways that has the minimum control over AML. You know what I'm talking about when I say AML, right? Okay. All right. Oh, this is Charles, and serious. This was one day, you know, I got him talking to some students a few years ago, and we don't need to show the volume, but he was explaining how a buyer just lost $200,000 US on a box of rocks. That is the supplier put into a container product that the buyer thought was real, and it didn't turn out to be real. So there's plenty of, if you go to my YouTube, you'll see there's a whole list of videos where I actually go around the trade show with Charles, and we point out all the funny things to look for and to avoid in the trade show. But not for me to waste your time, precious time tonight in the classroom. we want to go to more interesting things. And what am I talking about? Well, we're going to talk about some of the scams. There's the classic, it's on the way, and milk the cow. These are all different scams that have been found. One of the most classic ones is the scammer may send, they know that you're buying from a factory and maybe someone in the factory, but they will reach out to you and say, tell you the email, oh, we've changed our account. We've changed our bank account. And so without the factory owner knowing. But then there's another type of scam where the factory owner does know, and then the factory owner says, well, I got the money, but the factory owner is telling the buyer, well, sorry, we didn't get the money. That was a scam. You still need to pay me. You know? All right. So these are things that I sound like a lawyer, because what lawyers do is they scare you, right? They scare you so much that, oh, you need to pay me to protect you, right? Okay. It's a bit like that. But so I just want to, there's some examples. You look in the PowerPoint for details, but I want to show you the data, because the data is what matters. From the data from the supplierblacklist.com. All right, so traditionally, and many of you, some of you say, oh, you know, I want to have some theory. Okay, here is our 90 seconds of theory for you to take note of, all right? This is all about the make or buy approach to global sourcing. So if you are a large company, a big multinational, what matters and what you're concerned about is on the left-hand side, all right? Political risk, xenophobic risk. What do you mean by xenophobic risk?
Being foreign. Like...
Being foreign, yeah. And living in Hong Kong, I've seen many times when the Japanese stores in China were looted and ransacked when Japan did something wrong, or one of the senior ministers in Japan visited a raw shrine, and then suddenly there's an uproar in China. You know, Apple, how does Apple manage it? Because Apple doesn't own the factories in China, but everyone knows that Foxconn is Apple's factory. But what else does Apple do to protect itself from xenophobic risk?
Be aspirational.
Aspirational?
I mean, the Chinese consumer doesn't, they do not dislike Apple products.
Yeah, I'm talking about physical things here.
Right.
All right. Remember, you know, okay, that's a social ideal that you want to solve that problem, but I just want to talk about physical things. So nothing wrong with what you said. I think that's good. Being aspirational and a brand that consumers look up to, great. But I'm just saying, how does Apple control its factories in China that people cannot see that, oh, that's an Apple factory? But how do they have control over the factory if it's not Apple's factory? So you outsource something, but you want to have control over what you outsourced. How would you do that?
Somewhat like the idea where you bring the machine to the warehouse to manufacture and then bring it back. But in this case, it's you have it there. Anyone that goes in cannot bring anything in. Anyone that leaves cannot bring anything out. So in a sense, you create a barrier to ensure that your intellectual property stays within that compound.
Oh, I like that. I like your first part. Your first part, what you said is pretty spot on about this. Remember the tooling? You take the tooling in, manufacture, and then take it away, right? So you got physical control. So, and I like the example you're given, because what Apple will do, like it did with LG, they actually buy the machines and they put it in LG's factory in China. LG, Korean brand, right? All right. And so then they'll contract with LG and say, oh, LG, next 3 years, we have control over this machine of 60% of this time on this machine. Then after 3 years, you get to keep the machine, but we control 60% of this machine for the next 3 years. So everyone thinks that, oh, LG is the supplier to Apple, but really, yes, but LG is more. Apple's actually controlling the machine inside the factory that people think, oh, this is not Apple's factory. And that's one way that Apple secretly controls its xenophobic risk. Ah, interesting. Yeah, because when you outsource, theory, be careful, theory. Okay, when you outsource, you're giving up control. All right? I get you to do something for me. Well, like you cannot, agency theory, you will not be the perfect me doing what I want you to do for me. I can pay you $1 million, but you are not me. I can get you to do 98% of what I want you to do for me. I'm still outsourcing. I still need to monitor you. I still need to incentivize you. What does Apple do? It puts the machine in the factory and actually physically controls what the supplier does. Wow. And that hasn't been written about. I just know that because my friend that works for Apple told me. So it's just amazing. Crazy, in China, that is. All right. So political and environmental, that's the big boys' game. That's the big men's game, the big multinationals. But the problem is that there's control costs and coordination costs. That's the right side. And these are the costs that are more borne by SMEs and solopreneurs. Oh, you think this is like what you've got here is a time in 2017 when China sent a message out to all factories in certain districts and certain industries to close down. To close down.
Why?
They want to protect the environment. And so they were monitoring the factories during the day. And so, but the factories kept on operating. So what do? Well, they'll send in people to stop the factory. Oh, then the factories worked at night time. So what do they do? What do they do to stop the factories at night time? Oh, you go in and break the machines. All right. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is to understand that when you're in a foreign country, you cannot control everything. All right? Remember the theme. Have a contract, but it won't save you. You cannot control everything, and especially if you are a multinational. We'll get into that in the final weeks of this session. You cannot control everything. These things are happening from time to time. Every 5 years, in any country you source from, there's always going to be some major disruption on average. That's what they say. Oh, you want to source from Vietnam? Well, just be ready. Every 5 years, there's going to be something that's happened. Want to source from India? Every 5 years, something's going to happen. Want to source from India? Every 5 years, something's going to happen. Where you won't be able to do anything for 1 or 2 months. That's a cost you have to factor in. This is not just a China thing we're talking about here. We are talking about global sourcing. Remember, what's this unit called? Global Supply Chain Management. Am I right? We're not talking about global consumer behavior. All right? That's the international business. The other unit you can take, the core unit. All right? We're upstream, supplier. All right. So because this is a theory. All right. These are costs that companies have to balance. All right. They're always balancing because you've outsourced, you lose control. These are out of your control. You try to avoid them. So then you've got to put in these controls to try and bring it back to some semblance of, we can control 90% of our operations. Wow. All right. So keep that in mind. Just a reminder, if you want to know more about the theory, then we will go into this in a little bit more detail in the final weeks of this semester, where we look at, domestic, international, make or buy, which is more like a theoretical box to put things in. All right, so just finishing up, I just want to show you some data. So I pulled out all of these issues from the supplierblacklist.com. And these are complaints from suppliers. So it's kind of bias, right? It would be good if we had good and bad and compare the two. But in some ways, these are all complaints. But what we did do is separate them into complaints that are things you expect to have go wrong with a supplier. What are those things? Poor quality, bad delivery. Or, sometimes suppliers they don't do it deliberately. It's just that something went wrong. Maybe they had a missed delivery of raw materials, so then that slowed down their delivery. They tried their best, but you blame the supplier anyway, right? All right. So we're not saying the suppliers deliberately set out to do something wrong by you. All right. But these things happen. And so then buyers will complain about that, and that's in our data. But there are other complaints where it was blatant. That is, the buyer lost money. The buyer got a box of rocks and they didn't get their money back. Okay? Blatant. Like, seriously, here's the breakdown of the products. Industrial, electronic. Remember I told you, if you're doing sourcing for the first time, do not source what? Electronics. What else did I say? Don't source anything with a moving part. All right. What else did I say? Maybe just stick to one type of material.
Just source plastic.
Yeah, maybe a plastic soup ladle. All right. Something simple that won't break. All right. All right. So that's why, look, the minimum complaints are in clothing, office supplies, household. Most of them industrial, electronic, component. All right. So keep away from those hot areas. Interesting. There's areas in China, but I just want to show you the stage of the relationship where complaints occurred. Well, the initial order. Look, 70% was on the initial order. So be careful when you're on the initial order. That's when you have low experience. You don't know what's going to happen. You're not ready for everything. And then they got you. All right. Now, what about if we talk about the experience in the first year? Yeah, 38% in the first year. All right. 16% 1 to 3 years. Just looking at the data here of the supplier blacklist. All right. But now, remember I started an hour ago and I said, have a contract, but it won't save you. Well, this is all the complaints, but 77% of them, they had a formal contract anyway. It's not like they didn't have a contract. All right. All right. But here's the kicker. All right. How many of them visited the production site? Hands up for majority, hands up for minority. Come on, have a guess.
Minority.
The minority. The minority visited the production site. All right. 17%, 83% did not visit. Remember, these are complaints in the supplierblacklist.com, right? Information and business license was accurate. No. Level of independent quality control. I contacted the audit myself, 35%. No independent QC took place, 58%. Next week, we're doing the third circle, that is the QC. All right, 58%, no QC. All right. So, and remember I kept on telling you, because many of you got an RFQ quotation, EXW, am I right? And I said, why can't you get FOBs? But the supplier offered to organize this shipment from the factory to me. Okay, all right. But look at the complaints. Most of the complaints were when you had B-port, EXW, FOB only 27%. Okay, FOB is actually safer than B. What does B port mean?
Before port.
Which one?
Before port.
B port.
Yeah. Before port.
Before port. Okay, so the buyer's port. All right, so you ship from Port Klang in Malaysia.
Yeah.
All right, so a supplier offers you. Now, I know you did air. All right, but they basically a supplier saying, "Oh, we'll send it to KLIA or we'll send it to Port Klang," and you think, "Wow, this is the best deal in the world." No, don't take that deal. All right. FOB, because that's when you can check. That's when you can actually check before it leaves the country of the supplier, and that's what you need to do. And I'm not just talking about Chinese suppliers, although they were majority, but these are complaints against suppliers from France, Germany, Hong Kong, India, Malaysia, all right, Thailand, all right. So this is not just this is an outsourcing issue. It's an agency problem, all right. And you just got to know who you trust when you are dealing with other people. So let's have a break. I think tonight, your big takeaway tonight is just to remember that this second circle, the 3-circle control framework, have a contract, but it won't save you. If you know it won't save you, then you need to do this, 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 and this. You need to do all these things. And tonight was more about talking about what are those physical things that you should do. The big takeaway from the supplierblacklist.com or the data that I want you to take away tonight is simple. I'll write it in red. I will write it in red. All right, you figure out that word. All right. What's the word?
Factory.
Factory, yes, that's it. All right, if you don't remember anything tonight, the contract won't save you. Visit the factory. Okay, have a break. After the break, we have a group that's going to be presenting tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you.
When you want to set up the discussion? When you want to set up the discussion?
I had brain fog. I had brain fog on the first to market, first to first to market and first to register.
You really changed it.
I know it's opposite, but
If it's really far like I'll definitely push it for the better. If you ask me where, I tell you I'll give you the week.
okay, where's my iPhone? I have my iPhone back. Pardon? It's getting bigger, isn't it? It's dangerous, isn't it? So be careful.
I don't have insurance.
Yes.
Not in office hours. After 8. After 8, alright.
40 minutes.
Do you have USB?
File cannot be converted.
Are you using Mac?
Yes.
Okay, you can do.
Do we share it to Zoom and then someone can control it?
You can share it. You can share it. To
Share
Zoom.
our screen on Zoom, yeah.
Yeah, is it Zoom on? Okay, that's fine. But bring it out the front and then you can control it, right? That'll be good. Excellent.
Oh, yeah. Are we doing it? Good luck.
Good luck. You just put one of you put your names on this card. You can use the microphone.
Okay. Now, that's your color coding.
Color coding.
No. Yes.
What happened?
You're gonna get the yellow.
Yeah, I said it's counted.
Yeah, so literally, like, I think, like, your whole ankle goes.
Yeah.
What's the magic thing? It's like cold and warm, like. Yeah, yeah. You didn't get it. Oh, this much. Oh, thank you. Oh, that helps a lot. Thank you very much. We have another. We saw there is a requirement
After it's okay. That's all right. You have it digitally, right?
Yeah.
Can everyone access it online?
We're gonna use the screen and open the Google Docs to show the detail.
Oh, yeah, so everyone can see that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's all right. Okay, no problem.
It gets possible morning.
No.
Doesn't you comment?
Speaking of.
This one's the most. This one's fine.
Oh, yeah.
One is square.
Are we using the UCF? Using that one? No, use that one. No, I use that one. What can you?
Which computer are you using?
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Hello. So, sorry, the guys from online, can you hear us?
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, okay, sweet.
Oh, I like that.
Sweet. So can we do it?
I like how you asked.
Can we?
Yeah, sure.
So, we are ready? So hello everyone, we are Group Hippo, and good evening. We like to wish everyone a pleasant evening. The members of our group who will be speaking are as follows: Leon, Yermia, Didar, and I. We would like to take this opportunity to show you about two brands, Olang and Oni. First, I will provide a brief summary of the item offered by these two brands, and then I will ask other speakers to demonstrate the various stages of the production. The first product is a headphone manufactured by Olang. This primary product of Onis is an automobile camera as well as headphone. We hope that by the end of our presentation, you will have a comprehensive understanding of the product manufacturing process. I will now offer the floor to the first presenter, Leon. He will introduce the first section.
All right, thank you, Alting, for introducing Group Hippo. Hi, my name is Leong, and I'm going to give a comparison in the working environment and safetiness of the headphones manufacturer, Olang, and the dash cam manufacturers, Ioni. So now imagine this. What is the factory's worst nightmare? Getting caught on fire, right? Or an outbreak of fire, right? So do you remember the Beirut's explosion incidents? That was when an excessive stockpile of ammonium nitrate in the warehouse and a fire occurred, which then initiated the explosion. So now, as you can see here, the fire extinguisher is location of Olang in the first picture is hidden or being blocked by the stock box or raw material. So this is a sign of hazardous behavior conducted by the company itself, as it does not take their company's safety protocols seriously. But as you can see from the Ioni sites, the below one, their fire extinguisher is well exposed and easily accessible in the event of fire occurring in the factory or warehouses. Why is it blank? Oh, whatever. Okay, moving on. As you can see from the Olang's second picture, the wire one, their working assembly line had a damaged line in which is connected to their soldering sticks. So as you can see here, the factory's solution is to just wrap the damaged part with normal cellophane tape. So now there are two types of incidents just waiting to happen. So first, we just wait for the workers using the soldering tools to be electrocuted. And the second incident will be we wait for a fire to happen, and they could not access their fire extinguisher in the first picture. So now for Ioni, their working environment is quite safe, as you can see. From their soldering tool, it's all brand new because their models sticking in the wall emphasize on cleanness, safetiness, and prevent wastage. So then the last but not least, the third picture, their workstation. Now you might be wondering, what can a workstation do harm to a factory, right? So as you can see here from Olang's side, the table materials are built differently compared to Ioni's. Olang uses a hardwood table to build their finishing product as part of their quality inspection. Now, what's the difference between the two factories? If you pay close attention, Ioni undergoes their quality inspection and must verify their product functionality on an anti-static workstation. Yeah, the keyword here is anti-static workstation. And then, after the test is complete, the pieces are placed in separate special boxes to protect them throughout the shipment. An anti-static mat is designed to help lessen the effect of electrostatic discharge, ESD, on an individual or static sensitive component. It also assists in prevent explosion and fires. So that's all for my part. Now I'll pass it on to the next auditor, Didar.
Good evening, everyone. So now I'm going to talk about the assembly line of both Ioni and Olangs. So this is where the interchangeable parts added to product in a sequential manner, as we could see. So the differences between both two brands, when it comes to Oni, as we can see on our bottom part, where they're using suction pipe and soft sponge compartments for them to help from not causing any damages to their circuits or the electronic raw materials, so that when the final product comes in, there is no defect And at the same time, we could see there is a very organized assembly line on the bottom right, where in Alling, we could see that there is no Section 5. And also the circuits are pretty messy in a basket, while the workers are pretty knowledgeable and experienced. However, there could be a chance of missing parts from one another. Okay, so moving to the next slide. So here on top part, as we see Alling making the headphones, there are no anti-static, as my first speaker told you about anti-static workstation. There's no anti-static uses here. So what's anti-static, first of all? So it reduces the electronic discharge from the product itself. So which we could see in Oni, they are wearing it, and they also have a protective workstation for delicate parts of their electronic compartments and also the circuits. And each of the parts are being carefully assembled and installed into their car RDVR or their headphones. While on the other hand, Alling is pretty rough, or roughly placing on the assembly line, where they have a chance of getting their products coming back to the assembly line again and again, while there is no anti-static and no suction pipe. But Aoni having a very protective workstation for their assembly line, where they're testing right after they assemble. So now I'll pass it to my next speaker, Alteng. Thank you.
Hello. So now I will introduce the next step, quality inspection. Oh, okay. So the first headphones from Olin. These two images provide a preliminary knowledge of the producting test of Olin. When the headphone is transferred to the testing unit, the quality inspector will first charge the headphone before testing its ability to be turned on and its functionality. So in this procedure, the inspector will also inspect the earphones using a combination of manual and a machine examinations. So when a headphone is defective, the quality inspector will record the fault type and the model type on the test form based on the duration of the test. After that, they're gonna deliver the defective headphones to the maintenance department for the repair based on the nature of the defect. So due to the variety of the products, the Oni's quality inspection procedure is more complex. First, as a start of the inspection, the quality inspector must verify the product's functionality on the anti-static workstation, as my members said. And then after the test is complete, place the pieces in a special box to protect them throughout shipping. With 10 different tests, they only has the 10 different tests in their testing room. Oni's test report provides a greater amount of the content and feedback for each test result, which includes the agent test, the battery test, and several others. Due to the lack of the test space, the numbers of tested samples are rather limited in relation to the output, because every pieces of their goods need to pass the quality inspection. This will make Oni waste a lot of time in this process. However, Oni is attempting to enhance this section. In general, the quality inspection process for the two brands share some similarities, although their respective product features necessitated the employment of the different inspection techniques. Now I will pass to the last speaker.
So lastly, let's look at the comparison of warehouse facilities or the storage rooms between Altang and Aoni. The offline storage room is located within the same area as its assembly room. Moreover, from the first and second pictures, we can also see that the cardboards are not well organized. Also in offline, the factory doesn't have lines on the floor that should indicate the maximum area the box can be. Comparatively, Aunis has their own storage room. The storage room looks organized, which makes it easier to send product immediately if someone places an order. The box was arranged neatly with no box surpassing the yellow line. Next slide.
Conclusion.
So in conclusion, Aoni has a more complex testing policy that ensures their product perform well. They also provide compartment for secrets and raw material, unlike offline's messy assembly line. In terms of environment safety, Aoni has a better working environment compared to offline. One of them is that Aoni implements an anti-static mat, which prevents damage to the components. In addition, Aoni arranged the storage room neatly and separated from the assembly line. So that is all for us. And so if you are about to buy a new product, which factory would you choose? Thank you.
Hi guys. So we have a report that we noted from the both brands and suppliers, as we can see here.
So as you can see here, offline, they have showroom to display their 20 different type of headsets, and their main customer is basically in the US, UK. Their major customer will be from the Europe, and they also ship worldwide. So in terms of the Aoni, they would have different types of testing room in which offline they didn't have. So other than that, we have discussed about the disadvantages and all the advantages which is in our slides. So there's no need to further discuss about that. So thank you. We will end our presentation here.
So any questions, guys? Yeah. Jifu, you question?
No.
Which company will you choose? Ioni or offline?
No, I went out just now.
Okay, very good.
That's a good question for everyone. So please ask the class.
Yeah, Yongsheng.
I would ask, because I mean, obviously, how it seems like it's driving direction that Oni is a way better company, but according to your table, the other company actually had more exports going to foreign country like USA, UK, Europe, and worldwide. So I do have a doubt how this company, which it seems like it's very shaky, it's not very well organized, had more exposure to a foreign country like all this well-known country as compared to Ioni, which doing everything right but doesn't seem as reputable as offline.
Yeah, all right. So as far as you see, All-Link, you have said that they have more customers, right? Even in like seasonal basis, sometimes they have their workers goes up to double in numbers from 50 to 100. All right, but it's like the cheap market because the All-Link mostly making products ranging from somewhere around less than $10 until $30-$40, where Oni, on the other hand, starts from somewhere around 20 and it goes up by their systems, the technological updates, Bluetooth, and all other functions.
Okay.
Hello. Okay. So, given the differences in like the processes and assembly line, it's like it's quite clear which one's better, which is only. But the question is, if let's say I'm looking for something that's value for money, or other like, okay, I don't mind paying, but can you ensure that the product that you're delivering me has, in a sense, that level of, in a sense, it meets my expectations, or like would going for a cheaper, slightly cheaper product with okay quality, not the best, be more like which one would you say that would give me that balance?
Actually, I won't say it depends on your like the money you provide, right? So every product has their own market. So if you want to buy some, if you want to like buy some like low price products, and actually the online they can ensure the quality and other things. They just like they don't have like we can say they don't have the organized factory or something like that, but they have their own consumers. They can, they have as my part, they have their own test space. They can ensure the all the products pass through the test. And I hope that answer your question. Yeah.
And also to further add on, because what we say, USA, UK, Europe, worldwide, like offline, because these are the countries that it's mentioned in the video. So for Ioni, we did our research. Actually, they did ship worldwide to the US, Canada, and Germany also. Yeah, so that is not in the video. So that's just an extra addition information. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Oh, I have a question. So does it, can it help me to know where their customers are from? How can that help me? How can that help me as a buyer? You just told me who their customers are, from which countries and things like that. Is it useful for me as a buyer to know that? And how can I use that to my advantage?
Like we think depends on you like as a buyer in different country, you have like your own background or culture, like something like that. You want to buy like any product from this two brand, you need to know the competitor in your market, right? So through that, the report for the main buyers can help you to like fix that problem, to know your competitor in your own market. Yeah, like you want to sell some products on Amazon, you need to know what's your like the risk, like competitor. So that report can help you to figure it out. Yeah.
And also to add on, besides knowing your competitors, you need to know what is the purchasing purposes, because some company might just purchase these headphones for giveaway purposes, free gift, like for welcoming staff gift like that, or maybe they can purchase it and sell it at a higher price. So it depends on your purposes. Yeah.
Okay, that's the strategy. But let's just think about working out. Remember the theme of tonight? Okay, you have a contract, but it cannot what? Not save you. Okay, right, that's the theme tonight, right? So how can I use that knowledge of where their customers come from to my advantage to find out? Maybe what, you know, I don't know who Ioni is. I don't know who Ovlang is. How can I use that to my advantage? Is there some way, can that help knowing where the customers come from? Is there some way I can use them to minimize that information asymmetry I have about who these suppliers really are? Can I use it to my advantage? How?
Yeah, because I mean, if you export to certain country like US, they have certain like qualification that they need, like certain certified, like ISO or something. So if you know they will be able to export to these countries, then it will lower your risk of getting things that is inferior. So if you have exporting to US, UK with all this restriction imposed by this country, that means they are more reliable in that
Very
sense.
good. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Also to add on, like if you're bringing products to a country to sell, there are in a sense requirements that you need, like not just ISO, like Malaysia has MCMC. So in order to sell your products here, you need to register with them, and there will be a series of tests for them to conduct to make sure that your product meets the standards of the market.
So knowing if they're already shipped to Malaysia, then that's good. If you want to ship to Malaysia, that's one way. What's another way? How can you use it in your negotiation?
Sorry, what's your question?
Oh, how can you use it in your negotiation to, when you're talking with the supplier? Okay, the first point is knowing the customers are from a particular country helps give you a signal that, oh, the supplier knows how to meet the standards of that country, assuming that that's okay. What else could you ask the supplier about the customer? What else could you ask them?
So what could it be used for this negotiation? Consider this is a new market and you have a lot of potential.
Just this is another strategy of just getting it. It's, you know, we're all trying to get around this information asymmetry gap, right? That's the big problem. Information asymmetry. The supplier knows something you don't know. Can you trust the supplier? You're trying to. How can you get around that? What happens when you apply for a job? What does the employer always ask of you? Come on.
Your experience.
Come on, starts with R. Come on.
Your skills.
I know, because some of your friends that were in the previous a year ahead of you, they knock on my door.
Oh, reference. Recommendation.
Yeah, that's it. All right. So you can use their customers for exactly the same reason.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, we're trying to overcome the information asymmetry gap. So when you said, "Oh, you've got a customer in the US," what would you say to the supplier?
Reference.
Yeah, but then the supplier will say, "Oh, I don't want to." If you're shipping to the US too, then the supplier may be reluctant to give you a reference from a US customer because they don't want their customer knowing that, oh, another buyer has contacted them to ship into the same country. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Right. So they're not going to be willing to do that. So how do you get around that? Because you know, when you're job interview, a reference, it breaks down that information asymmetry between who you are and what the employer thinks who you are, right? So you want to do that with the supplier, but you can't use a customer from the country that you want to ship to. So how do you get around that?
Use another customer from another country that has, in a sense, a pedigree.
Yeah.
It works too.
Exactly. You use a customer from another country. And you say, Mr. Supplier, oh, I see you're a customer in Australia and you've got a customer in the US. Look, I'm not shipping to Australia. Would it be possible you allow me to contact your customer in Australia just to get a reference check on you? All right. And you say, look, I'm not interested in that market. I want to do the US market. But if you say it's, oh, can you let me contact your customer in the US, and you're shipping to the US and the supplier's going to, no way, Yeah. So this is all about, remember, this is very good tonight. First time, give them a hand. Don't discount any little information that enables you to reduce that information asymmetry. All right? Okay. Because if you think about the other way, right, the whole idea of contracting is to deal with an information asymmetry problem. Am I right? But remember what we said, a contract cannot save you. So therefore, you've got to look at other ways of reducing that information asymmetry. And I think that's a big takeaway from tonight. But yeah, very good first up. Well done, guys. All right, we've got time for Kahoot. Just if that's not all, let's do Kahoot. Action packed. And the question is, can I get it up and running very fast? Let's see. And because we've got the subtitles, we won't have the subtitles interrupting the Kahoot. I've not maximized the screen. All right. All right. So Kahoot 681656. Remember tonight, okay, information asymmetry is the problem. All right. And generally in the Western world, we use contracts, but contracts won't save you. So therefore, you've just got to try all these other things to reduce your information asymmetry. Okay? References, visiting the factory, okay, doing what my friend Mike Bellamy does, having a secret assembly, all these things is because the contract will not save you. Okay? Okay. Kahoot 681656. Are you ready, ski daddies? Online, are you ready, ski daddies?
Yep.
Yes.
Are you ready online?
Let's go.
Yes.
That's better.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right. There's 27 of you. I think that's good. And there's some questions on India, so be ready. We threw them in, huh? Projecting government, that is theme for tonight. Okay, hopefully you can see all the answers without all the subtitles. Great, great. Which of the following is a reason to source from India? A reason to source from India. Low MOQs, eco-friendly products, efficient logistics, no trade tariffs. Definitely not efficient logistics, but the other three. Okay. Low MOQs. Remember, Megla's associate, she was just shipping 50 of something or 100 of something. She wasn't shipping thousands of something.
Wait, there's no music.
Young Shun. Where are you? Where are you? Oh, okay. Can't go on the US Open, but he's doing well in the Kahoot. 2 out of 16. Which of the following is the con of sourcing from India? Something that you should not use, something that is not good from sourcing from India. Ease of communication is not a con. Longer lead times. Remember, Megla was talking about those 60 days. Remember that? So there's a hint there. All right. Definitely longer lead time, limited product range. Okay. Most of you got half that right. So well done. Scoreboard. Paishan online. Hello, Paishan. Are you there? Are you here in class? Krishna, Maria, Jocelyn, BH. Well done. 3 out of 16. India is the largest producer of what? Oh, Megla said that tonight, so you should know that. Actually, China is not far away. China is not far away from India in terms of largest producer of. Young Song coming back. 4 out of 16. Multi-select. What should you check to verify a supplier in India? Yeah, I wouldn't do web address. Factory address, maybe, definitely some of these codes or numbers. Okay, the GST number and the ICE code, that's an India-specific item. 12 places. Paishan is on top, 5 out of 16. Seller name in the contract does not have to match the receiver of the payment. True or false? Oh, you should know this one. Seller name on the bank has to be factory, it has to match the contract. Everything has to match and be in alignment. So it does have to match, absolutely. Mike talks about that. Remember with the fish behind the fish tank? He talks about the name of the contract, the name of the factory, the name, everything all has to match and be exactly the same. 6 out of 16. Which of these can go wrong when sourcing? Oh, that's an easy one, this one. Come on. Chance to get some very strong points here if you answer very quickly. Yeah. All of the above. 24 of you got that right, so well done. Pritham, Jason, Maria, SFA, JF, 7 out of 16. What scenarios have a high risk of encountering a scam? A high risk. Oh, this one's an easy one. Should know this one.
Yeah.
All of the above. Absolutely. All of you are doing very well. It's awesome. 19 of you got that. Maria, Jason, HY, Silly Buffalo 77. Who is that? Okay. All right. Very creative. Very creative. 8 out of 16. Which action is categorized as a classic scam? A classic one. Yeah. Classic. Either the first or the second one, exactly. Buyer paying the deposit, but nothing is shipped. It happens. It happens. Remember that 30% down? That's why you have to make clear in the contract that that 30% needs to be purchased of, put towards purchase of materials. No. No. Where's no? Are you with us? Yes, good. At the back, 9 out of 16. Which action is categorized as it's on its way scam? Paying a deposit, asking for more payment due to various excuses. Paying full payment, but getting a box of defective products. It's on its way, meaning that often most suppliers go to, they say, I'll give 30%, give us 70% at the port. And so they'll do everything to make sure that all the checks and balances and the container is full, but it could be a box of rocks. So they've got to ship something. Something's got to go in the boxes. And sometimes it's cheapest just to put rocks in the boxes to make the same weight as what a product should be. So that's why they call it literally box of rocks. Okay. Bit morbid tonight, talking about bad things. Maria, Pritham, Jaslyn, Lin HY, Young Song, 10 out of 16. Which action is categorized as milk the cow scam? Remember, milking the cow, that is, you're asking for more, for more, for more, for more, for more. Yeah. All right, so you know that one. Okay, Maria's on fire, 11 out of 16. You must do your research and not only focus on price to avoid scams. Oh, look, if you don't know this one, then yeah, I should go home. Oh, come on, who said false? Who did that? 5. Online. Okay. That's scary. That's really scary. Maria, where's Maria? Wow. What happened? Multi-select, 12 out of 16. Why do we source globally from emerging economies? Interesting one, this one. Multi-select.
2 select or 3 select?
1, 2, 3. Low cost supplier in pursuit of if you want to avoid xenophobic risk, you stay local. You don't go global. All right. What happened? Is that the rain?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, today was the Typhoon 8 in Hong Kong. So, but probably different system. Okay, it's cool. I know because my wife's in Hong Kong. All right. Pritam, Jason, Lin, HY, Leong Song, Maria, 13 out of 16. What is the global sourcing cost trade-off? We're trading off something with something else. Remember I told you on one side, political, environment, xenophobic. But what was on the other side? What were we trading that off against? All right, it was control and coordination. More, once we get into how multinational is global source, we spend a little bit more time on looking at that trade-off in the last 3 weeks of this semester. All right, Pritam still on top, Jason, Lin HY, Leong Song, and no. All right, 14 out of 16. 14 out of 16. Based on the supplier blacklist study, which 2 are in-house audit mechanisms? In-house audit mechanisms. In-house meaning you're doing it inside your company, you're not outsourcing, right? So therefore, the buyer is doing the factory visit, the buyer is doing the QC. All right. In-house, outsource, you outsource to a third party to do it. Wow, that's pretty bad. Okay. 15 out of 16. How can suppliers deceive a buyer with a power bank product? Oh, you know this one, don't you? Come on, you know this one. Come on, what is it?
Who said it wrong?
Tell you what. Oh, come on, what's going on?
What?
No,
A lot of people said it. I know it's all of them.
Yeah.
Seriously, wow. Everyone went one way.
I gave you the been teaching you every week. Silly Buffalo is back with an answer streak of 3. Silly Buffalo 77. 16 out of 16. Which type of product is most purchased by buyers in the supplier blacklist? Remember I told you the most complaints they weren't household. Okay, they weren't sports and equipment. They weren't textiles. They were electronics. Huh? Congratulations. Congratulations. It's 9:58. Congratulations, Lynn. Maria, where's Maria? And Jocelyn, where are you? Stand up. Where's Lynn? Where's Lynn? Man, the three of you, man, very quiet tonight, but very good. All right, can I ask all of you, can you give feedback on the big thing you learnt tonight? And questions you still have on your mind. Okay, and please, really appreciate that feedback. It's very important for us to deliver a good learning experience for you. Remember, keep in mind, information asymmetry. We need more than contracts to reduce that information asymmetry. Can you all take a moment to actually give feedback in that? If you want to write more, you can record your name and we can actually help count that for your presentation if you like. Next week is going to be a fun week because next week, remember the third circle of the 3-circle control framework is the auditing. All of you I will be giving you an audit, factory audit, product audit to examine, and you need to work out whether that supplier passed, failed, or failed. I'll teach you how to do that. Like really practical stuff that we're trying to expose you to in this unit. So thank you so much again. Thank you. And now next week is week 6. That means halfway. And also that means that you need to have an idea for your project. All right. You need to start thinking an idea one, a backup idea, and then start talking to me about your project. Okay. Next week, I will ask you. Please.
For the presentation, we do it that because actually just because I'm sure we have a long then we pick what we want. Yeah.
And we
I don't know whether you should get I'm going to be very bad at that.
I think we should go on.
We what we want, and then we decide. Yeah. Sorry. Presentation. I think that's it. It's not. It's better.
You have to watch the last time. I didn't ask that question. I didn't want
All right. No, but then I was just one. Oh, I didn't. I thought you were talking about two different movies. Yeah, I didn't. I thought you meant that it's learning different. I misunderstood.
Oh, you forgot your name. Like you forgot your name.
Yeah.
Can you please like
Actually had a submission that my the presentation we're presenting. One more. Once nothing for clearing. I mean,
what?
to be honest, like during all the time. I think it's interesting how
It's always a bit.
last week.
Hey, I saw an inside
Sharing from yes, my lunch.
She moved back to India now. She was in Singapore. She was in India.
I had it.
Trained her.
I had a I like all.
I had like a 2:30.
Yeah, I'm going to be a lot at Club Really happy, enjoying the class. Thank you for doing it. See you.
You watching the US Open soon?
Yeah, I'm, you know, what happened? What do you need?